Let me crack open a beer. It's Mueller time.
Oh my goodness. All right, people have been going nuts the last few days with the belief that we're going to see the Mueller report any minute now. It's coming any minute now. We're going to get, it's Mueller time. Let's think just for a minute, people. So the report that is fresh in most people's minds is the Ken Starr report. That's the report that we got in the late 90s about Bill Clinton and all of his untoward affairs. But that was under a different set of laws, right? It wasn't a special counsel. It was an independent counsel. Like, Ken Starr did not hold elected office. He was not appointed to an official government agency. He was just an independent counsel that was producing a public report that told a story.
Yeah.
Robert Mueller is a former FBI director who is employed essentially by appointed by the Department of Justice. Like, he reports to Barr, who is now the head of he's the now Attorney General. And in that new framing of how the special counsel is done, one of the things that we know is that there's one sentence here that says, at the conclusion of the special counsel's work, he or she shall provide the Attorney General with a confidential report explaining the prosecution or declination decisions reached by the special counsel. So he's going to issue a confidential report to the Attorney General to either say we should prosecute or not. Now, the questions that he's meant to be investigating on are with, respect to, was there collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, of which basically you've got things like, the hacking of the DNC, what happened there? Was George Papadopoulos involved? Was Roger Stone involved? What was this thing about Donald Trump Jr. meeting with a Russian lawyer? What were these discussions about Trump Tower in Moscow? What was Paul Manafort in his capacity with Ukraine, working with pro-Russian interests and dealing with polling data that probably was outdated and not useful anyway? What was that all about? Efforts with the Russian influence in Ukraine itself. And then a Russian social media propaganda effort that was tiny, ill-advised, not very targeted, and half of it took place after the election anyway. And then some undisclosed Middle Eastern tied effort that isn't really talked about much. So that's everything with respect to collusion, right? So the indictments that have come down on that have been on Papadopoulos, have been on Roger Stone, have been on Manafort for essentially campaign finance fraud, financial collusion, and things of that nature. We haven't really pinned down anything that's actually collusionary, right? We have no indictments on anyone for colluding with Russians, save the 11 Russian generals who will never come to the United States and never see the light of court.
All right, here's my take on this, is that this whole Russiagate from the very beginning was suspicious. It makes no sense whatsoever. It's been nothing that corporate media is still, I guess, in a recovery mode from what happened during the 2016 general election cycle, where Trump won and defeated Hillary Clinton. And as we all know, corporate media kept on saying that Clinton was going to win it. It's her turn. She's going to become president. And as soon as that didn't happen, they started screaming, Russia, Russia, Russia. Russia did this. Russia did that. Trump's not going to be impeached because of this. The Mueller report is not going to lead any calls for impeachment. It's already too little too late. It's a waste of time. The only way to really defeat President Trump is to, have a strong progressive candidate to fight him on the political debate stage and actually do something that was denied to us in 2016. This report, I don't know how many hours were wasted by the people on this campaign, how many financial resources were wasted on it.
Many hours have been wasted on this.
But it's not going to lead to anything. Trump is not going to be impeached because of this. Stop wasting your time with the story, especially if I could tell to anyone in corporate media. But this has been their bread and butter because it allows people who are, I guess, still stuck in the neoliberal mindset that, we're going to get Trump and the Mueller report's going to do it. Everyone's saying it. Anyone with a lot of influence saying it. Mueller's going to do it. There's a report's going to come out and it's going to get Trump.
I mean, it was a couple months ago that Politico was trying to let people down easy. Like, guys, it's not going to be that big of a deal.
No, or either that. No, I think the Politico
and NBC
article,
News just did it last week.
Yeah, and NBC News said, be prepared for disappointment. But what I found funny is that people like Rachel Maddow were then saying, this Russiagate story.
No, it's really real.
It's really real because they've been banking their whole career on it these past 4 years, which just goes to show you that a lot of these commentators on corporate media don't really know what's going on. I mean, they're paid a ridiculous amount of salary to basically tell you a lie.
Right. Now, I don't want to be misconstrued. I don't want to give the wrong impression of at least what my position is on what the Mueller report what will likely come about because of it. What I have been saying all along remains true. I think there is no direct evidence of collusion, specifically with the question of did the emails that came from the DNC and the Podesta emails, were they hacked by Russia, and was there collusion with the Trump campaign surrounding that? I think the public evidence of that is non-existent, and I don't expect to see it because I don't think it happened. The thing that might have some teeth is the obstructionistic behavior that the Trump campaign had.
Yeah, but, certain individuals are going to go behind bars.
Right, so
it's not going to be Trump.
Well, it might be Trump after he leaves office. Like, I don't expect an impeachment, but he could get indicted when he leaves office for things like his firing of Comey, some of his conversations with Jeff Sessions and Michael Flynn. Some of that, so it's weird. It's obstruction of justice for a claim that isn't borne out in evidence and we can't prove. But it could be obstruction that leads to criminal indictment. But again, I don't think that will be until after he leaves office. So a couple of things I also wanted to point out that I think people conflate with this story, think that are part of it and kind of aren't, are the Michael Cohen campaign finance issues with Stormy Daniels. That has its own separate legal case and its own separate indictments. It's not part of the Mueller report. The other thing that people tend to conflate with that is the Trump inauguration finance issue. That is its own separate indictment along with it, along with the Maria Butina NRA Russia person. That it's also not part of the Mueller report. It also has its own separate investigation.
I also want to give a shout out to somebody on our chat. Carbomots, glad to have you on the chat. Saw that you had some technical issues. We'll send an Adaptus Mechanicus to fix whatever technical issues are. But you're definitely correct. The probe will say that we already knew that Trump is a crook. You also mentioned to say, how will Rachel Maddow and company deal with it? They're probably going to have a meltdown or say, wait, there's going to be a second investigation. They're going to try and do something. I mean, if they go on corporate media and say, well, that's it, it's over. I mean, what else are they going to talk about? Because that's been their bread and butter, like I said, for the past, during the entire administration of Trump being elected as president. So a lot of these corporate commentators aren't going to really know what to do. But for all of us here in independent media, hey, we told them so that this wasn't going to lead to anything.
This is a red herring. This is the Democrats, Benghazi, all of that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's not going to lead to anything. And then there's one last quote from Carbomoss. I want to give you a shout out. There will always be those who claim Russiagate was real for decades to come. It will be similar to whitewash that is usually put on things like Venezuela coup attempt, for example. Yeah. So you're correct on this, and I do hope that enough people do realize that this probe was a waste of time. And now comes the real issue of going into 2020, are we going to have a real open debate on who's going to be the stronger candidate during the Democratic primaries and who will actually take on President Trump? Because we need a strong progressive candidate to actually challenge this. We just can't rely on the scapegoat of Russia. Right? Russia, Daniel said this in the first hour. Russia spent like, what, $4,000 on Facebook ads? But the neoliberal establishment spent millions of dollars on the Clinton campaign, and the Clinton campaign worked together with the Democratic establishment to deny Bernie Sanders the nomination in 2016.
You tell me those Russian internet trolls are so savvy that they could stretch $4,000 to be more powerful than $60 million?
You know what?
That's what they did? They're so savvy.
You know what? We might as well say that, yeah, they were savvy enough to somehow beat out the ridiculous neoliberal
we should
machine.
Learn from them, and then we can influence elections ourselves. Oh,
wait, we're already trying to do that in Venezuela.
Exactly. We don't use the internet for that. We just use economic sanctions. I wanted to point this out. A lot of the information I was grabbing recently on the Mueller report comes from a Vox article. You can tell that a lot of sort of your liberal class pundits are circling around trying to make excuses for why this thing they've been crowing about for 2 years is kind of turning out to be a nothing burger. And so this article is titled, we'll post a link to it later, 9 questions about the Mueller report you were too embarrassed to ask. Because it's basically like, yeah, this thing that we've been saying, they connect the dots and become so conspiratorial so quickly, and then we go, hey, it looks like you don't have any evidence for the claim you're making. You shut up, you conspiracy theorist. Like, oh my God, this is infuriating.
And we need evidence because, look, as we go into 2020, it's quite clear that the corporate media has failed to do its job. The fourth estate isn't really holding those in power accountable, and they're not really giving you, the American voters, the real information that's impacting all of us. And this is why we ask you guys to really support independent media, because we're going to have to construct a new fourth estate and really hold those in power accountable, including those that we like Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard. All right? That's the job of the media, the news, to hold those in power accountable for the actions. It's to inform a strong American populace to be involved. So I want to thank Paul DuPont for joining me in the second hour. Huge shout out to Daniel Lupker for the first hour. If you guys like what we do, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit that ring bell notification. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and on Spreaker. If you really support independent media, support Hard Lens Media on Patreon. That's our main heart and backbone to everything that we do here. It allows us to get better gear, make more content, and then also a huge shout out to all of you that are helping grow this channel up. Chicago needs a strong independent media network here, and Hard Lens Media is going to lead the charge.